As the door swung open, my heart raced. There he was, Jake, my husband's colleague, half naked in the conference room. The sight of him sent a jolt through me, a mix of surprise and something dangerously close to desire. I should have turned away, but the adrenaline coursing through my veins held me in place. How had we ended up in this moment, in a space meant for work? Hey, Jake stumbled, his voice low and laced with an edge I hadn't heard before. Jake, what are you doing? I managed to ask, my voice barely above a whisper. It felt surreal, like I had stepped into someone else's life. The thought of Tom, my husband, asleep at home, crashed into my mind like a wave. I thought I'd grab a quick break, Jake replied, stepping closer. The tension was palpable, thick and electric. I could see the muscles in his arms, the way his skin glistened under the harsh lights. Shouldn't you? I started, but the words faded. I was caught in his gaze, a storm of emotions swirling within me. What if I want to be here? He asked, his eyes piercing through my hesitation. That question hung in the air, taunting me. What if? I felt my resolve crumbling, and a part of me wondered just how far I was willing to go. I stood there, caught between the life I knew and this intoxicating pull towards something forbidden. Jake's first day at the company remains etched in my memory, like the vivid colors of a sunset that refused to fade. I can still picture him stepping into the office, a bright smile illuminating the dreary space of our Seattle workplace. The way he carried himself radiated confidence, making it impossible to ignore him. I remember thinking how refreshing it was to have someone like him around. During breaks, we would gather in the small kitchen, laughter bubbling between us as we shared stories. I often found myself hiding my wedding ring beneath the table, as if it were a shameful secret. What about you, Sarah? What's your story? Jake would ask, his blue eyes sparkling with curiosity. I would laugh lightly, deflecting his question. Oh, just the usual married life, I'd reply, my heart racing. I was aware of the chemistry that crackled in the air when our eyes met, an unspoken understanding that left me breathless. In those moments, I couldn't help but question my love for Tom. I loved him, of course, but there was something about Jake that stirred feelings I hadn't felt in years. Each time our gazes locked, I felt a spark that sent shivers down my spine. It was exhilarating and terrifying all at once. "You're a great listener," Jake would say, leaning closer as if sharing a secret. My heart would flutter at the proximity, caught between the thrill of his attention and the guilt that would inevitably follow. As the weeks passed, our connection deepened. I noticed how he would brush against me as we moved around the office, an accidental touch that felt anything but accidental. The way he laughed at my jokes made me feel special, as if I was the only one in the room. I tried to suppress the growing attraction, but it only intensified. I could sense it in the way he would linger a second too long when he handed me a file, the warmth of his skin igniting something within me. One afternoon, as we worked late on a project, the air was thick with tension. The office was quiet, and the glow of the computer screens illuminated the space, casting shadows that danced around us. I could feel his presence beside me, electric and inviting. "You're really good at this," Jake commented, his voice low and smooth. I turned to him, our eyes locking, and in that moment, the world outside faded away. It was just us, suspended in time. "Thanks," I managed to whisper, my heart racing. There was something in his gaze that made me question everything. I was aware of my wedding ring, heavy on my finger, a constant reminder of my vows. But as Jake leaned in closer, I was torn between desire and duty. I fought against the urge to lean in too, to close the distance that felt impossibly small. Then it happened. One afternoon, while we were in the kitchen grabbing coffee, he brushed his fingers against my arm, sending a jolt through my body. My breath hitched and I looked up, meeting his gaze. "Sorry," "Didn't mean to startle you," he said, a playful smirk dancing across his lips. But he didn't pull away. Instead, he lingered, his thumb lightly tracing my skin, igniting a fire that I had long buried. The moment felt surreal, and I could hardly think. Everything I knew about right and wrong began to blur. "Jake," I said, my voice shaking, "we shouldn't." But the protest felt weak. He stepped closer, the heat radiating off him, and I knew we had crossed an unspoken line. My heart pounded in my chest, and I felt dizzy with the rush of emotions swirling inside me. "I know," he said softly, his breath warm against my ear. "But it's hard to ignore what's between us." The honesty in his voice sent a thrill through me, and for a fleeting moment, I thought about how easy it would be to give in, to forget the world outside and just be with him. No expectations, no commitments, just raw attraction. And then I remembered Tom, my husband, who trusted me completely. The weight of guilt crashed over me like a cold wave, but Jake's presence was intoxicating. The thrill of the forbidden danced in the air, igniting a hunger I never knew I had. I felt trapped between two worlds, one of safety and the other of reckless desire. Days turned into weeks, and I found myself increasingly drawn to Jake. The playful banter we shared evolved into something more intense, something I couldn't quite define. My heart raced every time we were near each other, the thrill of his touch igniting a fire in me that I had thought was extinguished. I often found myself daydreaming about him during meetings, my thoughts drifting to the way he smiled at me, how his laughter echoed in my mind long after we parted. The guilt gnawed at me, but the desire was too strong to ignore. I began to question everything I thought I knew about love and fidelity. I was living in a haze of confusion, caught between the life I had built and the one that was slowly slipping away. In moments of solitude, I would often glance at my reflection, searching for answers that never came. Was it wrong to crave something more? To want the excitement that came with Jake? My life with Tom was comfortable, yet the thrill Jake offered felt like a breath of fresh air. I was lost in this whirlwind of emotions, unsure of how to navigate the storm brewing inside me. As I looked back on those early days with Jake, I knew something had shifted within me. I had opened a door I could no longer close, and with each passing day, I wondered how far I was willing to go. Would I risk everything for a chance at something new? Would I dare to follow my heart, even if it meant betraying the one person who loved me most? The questions lingered, but one thing was certain. I was no longer the person I once was. The thrill of Jake's presence had awakened something deep inside me, and I could only hope that I wouldn't lose myself completely in the process. I'm sitting at my desk, the faint hum of the office buzzing around me. When I hear the sound of the door creaking open, I look up and my heart skips a beat. There he is, Jake, my husband's colleague, standing there in nothing but his trousers, his shirt half open, exposing a hint of his toned chest. My mind races, caught in a whirlwind of confusion and desire. "Sorry, I didn't mean to startle you," he says, his voice low and smooth, sending a shiver down my spine. The tension in the room is palpable, thick like fog, wrapping around us. I can't speak. I feel the weight of my wedding ring on my finger, a heavy reminder that Tom, my husband, is just a few streets away, blissfully unaware of the storm brewing in this office. How did we get here? I wonder, barely able to process the situation. This was supposed to be a place of work, not a stage for my secret fantasies. I remember the first day I met Jake, how his charisma lit up the office, how he laughed easily and made everyone feel at ease. It felt innocent then, but I can see now how it set the stage for what was to come. As we worked late into the nights, immersed in spreadsheets and presentations, our hands would brush against each other, sending sparks through my body. Each accidental touch felt like an electric jolt, igniting something deep within me that I had long kept buried. I remember the first time he deliberately reached out, his fingers grazing my arm. It was like a wildfire had been ignited, and I knew I was in trouble. "Are you okay?" he asked, his eyes searching mine. I felt exposed, vulnerable, but I also felt exhilarated. I wanted to lean in closer, to breathe in his scent, to feel the warmth radiating from his body. My heart raced, and I could barely form a coherent thought. One evening, as we were wrapping up a project, the office was eerily quiet. I glanced at Jake, his eyes dark with intensity. "You know," he said softly, "we make a good team." I felt a rush of heat flood my cheeks, and I nodded, unable to trust my own voice. Then it happened. The kiss. It was quick, furtive, but it was everything. We were in the kitchen, the lights dimmed and the air thick with unspoken words. His lips found mine, and the world around us faded away. I could taste the forbidden sweetness of it, a mixture of adrenaline and desire. In that moment, I forgot about Tom and everything else. It was just Jake and me, caught in a whirlwind of passion that felt both exhilarating and terrifying. After that, our connection deepened. Text messages started flying back and forth between us, charged with innuendo and longing. Each notification made my heart race. I began to crave his words, the way they made me feel alive. But every time I looked at Tom, the guilt weighed heavily on my heart. He trusted me completely. And here I was, hiding a part of myself that was becoming harder to ignore. "Are you working late again tonight?" Tom asked one evening, his brow furrowing in concern. I could feel the heat rising in my cheeks as I lied. "Just a few things to finish up." I could see the shadows of doubt flickering in his eyes, but he nodded, accepting my excuse. I felt a pang of guilt, but it was quickly overshadowed by the thrill of what awaited me. Jake had suggested we meet at a hotel, a place where we could escape the watchful eyes of the world. As I walked into that room, my heart raced with excitement and fear. Jake was already there, waiting for me with that devilish smile that made my knees weak. The moment I stepped inside, I felt a rush of freedom. It was just us, two souls intertwined in a whirlwind of passion. As we kissed, all the rules I'd been trying to follow melted away. The pleasure was intoxicating, and with each touch, I felt liberated, like I was finally being true to myself. But reality came crashing back as I returned home. The normalcy of my life felt stifling. I was living a double life, and while my heart ached for Jake, I still had Tom, who deserved my loyalty. I wore a mask of composure, but inside, my desire for Jake was growing, turning into an obsession. "Are you all right?" Tom asked one night, his eyes narrowing as he studied me. I forced a smile, but I could see the concern etched on his face. I felt like I was balancing on a tightrope, teetering between the safety of my marriage and the thrilling chaos that Jake brought into my life. Then came the weekend escape. Jake proposed it, a chance to run away from everything. I concocted a lie about a business trip, my heart racing with both excitement and fear. As we drove away, I felt a sense of freedom enveloping me. It was just the two of us, and the world faded into the background. In that hotel room, our passion exploded like fireworks. It was raw and intense, and I felt alive in a way I had never experienced before. But as I lay in Jake's arms, a small voice in the back of my mind whispered that I was crossing a line I might never return from. Returning to my normal life was a challenge. I felt Tom's gaze on me, searching for answers to questions I couldn't afford to reveal. The more I tried to hide my feelings, the more I craved Jake. The thrill of our secret encounters became a drug, and I was addicted. One evening, as we sat together in the office, Jake leaned in close, his breath warm against my ear. "What if we took this further?" he whispered, the weight of his words hanging in the air. My heart raced at the thought, but the fear of being caught loomed large in my mind. I was torn between two worlds, each pulling me in a different direction, and I knew I had to make a choice. But for now, all I could do was hold on to this moment, caught in the web of desire I had woven around myself, unsure of where it would lead me next. I was sitting at my desk, staring at the blinking cursor on my screen, when my phone buzzed. It was a message from Jake, and my heart raced just reading his name. "Are you busy?" it said. I typed back quickly. "Just finishing up some work. You?" The seconds felt like hours as I waited for his reply. I couldn't shake off the thrill that always came with our conversations. A few moments later, my phone buzzed again. "Meet me in the break room. I need to talk to you." My stomach flipped. I glanced around the office. Tom was in a meeting, and I knew I had a small window of time. I stood up, smoothing down my blouse, trying to calm the flutter of nerves that danced in my chest. I walked towards the break room, my heart pounding with anticipation. When I entered, Jake was leaning against the counter, his arms crossed, looking as gorgeous as ever. The sight of him made my breath hitch. I felt a rush of warmth spread through me. "Hey," he said, his voice low and inviting. "Hi," I managed to reply, my pulse quickening. He stepped closer, and I could feel the tension in the air. "I've been thinking about you," he confessed, his eyes searching mine. My heart raced. I could hardly believe what I was hearing. "Really?" I asked, trying to sound casual, but the excitement bubbled within me. "Yeah," he replied, his gaze intense. "I can't stop thinking about that kiss in the kitchen. It was electrifying." I swallowed hard, remembering that moment vividly. The heat of his lips against mine, the way everything else faded away. "It was just a mistake," I said, trying to remind myself that I was married, that I had Tom waiting for me at home. Jake stepped even closer, his voice dropping to a whisper. Was it really a mistake? Because it felt right to me. The words sent a shiver down my spine. I was torn between the guilt of betraying Tom and the undeniable pull I felt towards Jake. "But, Tom?" I stammered, my heart heavy with guilt. "He doesn't have to know," Jake said softly, his eyes locked onto mine. "We can keep this between us, just us." I felt a rush of exhilaration mixed with fear. The idea of something secret, something that belonged to just the two of us, was intoxicating. "What are you suggesting?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "A little more than just stolen kisses," he replied, his gaze unwavering. "Let's explore what we have. I want to be with you." My heart raced at his words. I knew I should say no, that I should walk away and forget this madness. But the thrill of the forbidden tugged at me. I looked away, biting my lip, trying to gather my thoughts. "I don't know, Jake," I said finally, my voice shaky. "This could ruin everything. Or it could be everything you've been missing," he countered, his voice smooth and persuasive. "Just think about it. You deserve to feel alive." In that moment, I felt torn. I thought about Tom, so trusting and loving, and the life we had built together. But then I thought about the way Jake made me feel, desired, wanted, alive. "What if someone finds out?" I asked, the fear creeping back in. "We'll be careful," Jake assured me, taking another step closer. "We can keep it discreet. Just think of the excitement, the thrill of having something that belongs only to us." His words hung in the air, seductive and dangerous. I could feel the weight of my decision pressing down on me, the thrill of the unknown beckoning. "Okay," I whispered, my heart racing at the admission. "But we have to be careful. I can't let this affect my life with Tom." A smile broke across Jake's face, and I felt my resolve crumbling. I was stepping onto a path I never thought I would take. and the thrill of it made my head spin. "Trust me, I won't let you down," he said, his eyes sparkling with mischief. As I stood there, caught in the moment, I felt the weight of my choices. I knew I was crossing a line, but the way Jake looked at me made me feel like I was finally waking up from a long slumber. I took a deep breath, my heart thumping loudly in my chest. "Okay," I repeated, this time with more conviction. "Let's see where this goes." Jake grinned, and in that moment, I felt a rush of excitement mixed with fear. I was stepping into the unknown, and there was no turning back. I'm standing in front of the hotel room door, my heart racing as I clutch the keycard tightly in my hand. This is it. The moment I've been both craving and dreading. I take a deep breath, trying to calm the whirlwind of emotions inside me. The plan was simple. Meet Jake here, away from the prying eyes of the world, away from my life with Tom. But nothing feels simple anymore. I push the door open, and there he is. Jake is leaning casually against the wall, a playful grin lighting up his face. My breath catches in my throat at the sight of him, the way his eyes gleam with a mixture of mischief and desire. "You made it," he says, his voice low and inviting. "I almost didn't," I reply, stepping into the room. The door clicks shut behind me, sealing our secret. The air is thick with tension, a mix of excitement and anxiety swirling around us. I can still feel Tom's warm embrace from earlier, the kiss we shared before I left. How did I get to this point? Jake takes a step closer, his presence consuming me. "You look beautiful," he says, his eyes roaming over me. I feel a flush creep up my cheeks, a thrill running down my spine. "I know this is risky, but I couldn't wait to see you." I can hardly form words. The reality of what I'm doing weighs heavily on my conscience. "What if someone sees us?" I whisper, my heart pounding. He chuckles softly, his breath warm against my skin. That's the point, isn't it? To feel alive, to break free from all those rules. His gaze holds mine, and in that moment, the world outside ceases to exist. I feel the walls I've built around my desires crumbling. I nod, almost imperceptibly, and the simple act ignites something primal between us. He closes the distance, his hands finding my waist and pulling me closer. The heat radiating from his body makes my head spin. "Are you sure about this?" he asks, his forehead resting against mine. His eyes search mine, looking for reassurance. I can see the hunger in them, the longing that mirrors my own. "I don't know," I admit, my voice barely above a whisper. The thought of Tom flashes through my mind again, his trust, his love. But the thrill of Jake's touch, the way he makes me feel, it's intoxicating. But I want this. With that, he captures my lips with his, a kiss that starts soft, but quickly ignites into a fervent embrace. My mind races as I melt into him, the taste of him overwhelming my senses. All hesitation fades away. I lose myself in the moment, letting every worry slip away. We stumble backwards until we hit the bed, our laughter mingling with the soft rustle of sheets. Jake's hands explore my body, tracing over curves I had almost forgotten were there. Each touch sends shivers down my spine, igniting a fire within me that has been smoldering for far too long. God, I've wanted this for so long. He breathes against my ear, his voice thick with desire. I can hardly respond, my body reacting to his every word. I pull back slightly to look into his eyes, the depth of emotion swirling there. "Jake, what are we doing?" I ask, my voice trembling. He cups my face in his hands, his thumb brushing against my cheek. "We're feeling. We're living. Just for tonight, let everything else go." His words resonate within me, and I feel myself surrendering completely. I nod, knowing there's no turning back. I want this, want him. As we lose ourselves in each other, the weight of the world outside fades into oblivion. The thrill of the forbidden consumes me, and I revel in the pleasure of this clandestine encounter. Every kiss, every touch feels like a rebellion against the life I've built, a life that now seems so distant and unfulfilling. We become entwined, our bodies moving in perfect harmony. Each gasp and moan is a testament to the passion we've ignited, a fire that burns through every hesitation. The room is filled with the sounds of our desires, drowning out the voices of guilt and shame that linger in the back of my mind. As I lose myself in the heat of the moment, I can't help but wonder about the choices I've made. The thrill of being with Jake is exhilarating, but the reality of my life with Tom looms like a shadow. Yet, in this moment, nothing else matters. I am not a wife, not a daughter, not anything other than a woman craving the touch of a man who makes me feel alive. With each passing second, I realize that I am crossing a line, one that I can never uncross. The thrill, the danger, it all feels so right, yet so wrong. I want to hold on to this moment forever, to forget the world outside, and dive deeper into this forbidden affair. Finally, as we collapse together, our breaths mingling in the air, I feel a strange sense of clarity wash over me. This is what I want, at least for now. I may be playing with fire, but the heat is too intoxicating to resist. In this hotel room, with Jake by my side, I am finally free. I still remember the moment I walked through the office door, my mind still buzzing with the day's tasks. I was just about to settle into my routine when I saw him. Jake. He stood there, half dressed in the conference room, his shirt unbuttoned, and the hint of a smirk on his lips. My heart raced, and I felt a rush of adrenaline surge through me. How on earth did we end up here? Hey, he said, his voice smooth, almost teasing. Jake, what are you doing? I managed to stammer out, my eyes darting around to make sure no one else was around. The tension between us crackled like electricity, a mix of surprise and something much deeper. Something that sent shivers down my spine. He stepped closer, his eyes dark and inviting. I was just waiting for you. We've been working so closely together. I thought it was time to lighten the mood. The thought of my husband, Tom, sleeping peacefully at home, invaded my mind. I should have turned around and walked away, but my feet felt rooted to the ground. The thrill of the moment, the risk of it all, kept me there, caught in his gaze. Jake, this isn't right, I whispered, though my voice lacked conviction. Isn't it? He replied, tilting his head slightly. We both know there's something between us, something that goes beyond work. I swallowed hard, my pulse racing. I could feel the pull, an undeniable attraction that had been building since he first walked into the office months ago. Jake's charisma had a way of lighting up the dullest days, and I had often found myself lost in thought about him during meetings, while pretending to focus on my husband. I remembered the laughter we shared, the way he always seemed to know how to make me smile, the little moments that had begun as innocent, but had slowly turned into something more. My heart ached with confusion. How had I let it come to this? Don't you think we should just forget about it? I asked, though my voice trembled with uncertainty. Forget about what? He shot back, stepping closer, his breath warm against my skin. The chemistry? The way you look at me when you think no one is watching? I felt my cheeks flush. I couldn't deny it. I had been caught up in this whirlwind of emotions, and it scared me. But there was a part of me that was tired of hiding, tired of pretending everything was fine at home. It's complicated, Jake. I'm married, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. And yet, here we are. You're standing here, and I can feel the tension. You want this as much as I do, he said, his eyes locked onto mine with an intensity that made my heart race. The room felt smaller, the air thicker. I wanted to look away, to retreat to the safety of my life with Tom, but my body betrayed me. I found myself stepping closer to Jake, drawn in by the magnetic pull of his presence. I shouldn't be doing this, I breathed, but even as the words left my mouth, I knew they were hollow. Let's just see where this goes, he urged, his voice low and inviting. No one has to know. In that moment, I felt a rush of excitement mixed with fear. The thrill of secrecy was intoxicating. Before I knew what was happening, I reached out and touched his arm, feeling the warmth of his skin beneath my fingertips. It was as if a dam had broken, unleashing a flood of feelings I had tried so hard to suppress. Just one kiss, I whispered, half a plea, half a challenge. Jake's eyes sparkled with mischief. Just one? I nodded, and in that instant, I felt the world around us fade away. He leaned in, and our lips met softly at first, then with increasing urgency. It was everything I had been longing for, a release of pent-up desire that sent my senses into overdrive. The kiss deepened, and I forgot everything. The guilt, the fear, the reality of my life. All that mattered was this moment, this connection. I pulled him closer, lost in the heat of it all, as though we were the only two people in existence. When we finally pulled apart, breathless and wide-eyed, I knew we had crossed a line. There was no going back now. I had opened a door to a world of desire I had never fully understood until now. Are you sure you want this? Jake asked, his voice barely a whisper, his brow furrowed in concern. I hesitated, feeling the weight of my choices pressing down on me. My mind flashed to Tom, to the life we had built together. But the thrill of Jake's touch lingered on my lips, pulling me in like a moth to a flame. I don't know, I admitted, feeling both exhilarated and terrified. But I can't help but want more. Jake smiled, a wicked glint in his eye. Then let's make the most of it. As I stood there, caught between two worlds, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning. A new chapter was unfolding, one that promised passion and chaos, and I wasn't sure if I was ready for it. But the allure of the unknown was too strong to resist, and I found myself stepping further into the shadows, embracing the thrill of what lay ahead. I remember the moment Jake suggested a weekend getaway as if it were yesterday. We were in the office late one evening, the glow of the computer screen casting shadows on our faces. I could feel the tension between us, thick and electric. What if we just escaped for a bit? He asked, his voice low, almost conspiratorial. My heart raced at the idea. We were already flirting with danger. This would push us further down the rabbit hole. I hesitated, glancing around the empty office, then leaned in closer, lowering my voice. You mean a trip? But what about Tom? The words felt heavy in my mouth, laden with guilt and excitement. Tom trusted me, and the thought of lying to him made my stomach twist. But the thrill of a secret rendezvous with Jake was intoxicating. Jake leaned back in his chair, a wicked grin spreading across his face. Just tell him it's a business trip. We can go somewhere nice, just the two of us. No stress, no interruptions. I could see the fire in his eyes, and it ignited something deep within me. Taking a deep breath, I nodded slowly. Okay, I'll make it work. The lie formed in my mind, a carefully crafted story about a conference in another city. As I planned the details, I felt a rush of adrenaline. This was not just a weekend away. It was a chance to be free. Days passed, and I found myself counting down to the weekend. Each moment spent with Tom felt like a countdown to something I couldn't fully comprehend. I fabricated elaborate excuses about late meetings and project deadlines, each lie building a wall between us. Tom was oblivious, trusting, and I hated myself for it. Finally, the day arrived. I packed a small bag, my heart racing with excitement, and fear. The moment I stepped into the hotel room, I felt liberated. It was a space where no one knew me, where I could shed my responsibilities and just be. Jake was already there, waiting for me with that familiar smirk that sent shivers down my spine. "Welcome to our little escape," he said, his voice smooth as silk. I felt a flutter in my stomach, a mix of nerves and longing. The door closed behind me, sealing us in our secret world. We spent the first few moments just looking at each other, the air thick with unspoken words. Then Jake stepped forward, closing the distance between us. "You have no idea how long I've waited for this," he murmured, brushing a strand of hair behind my ear. I could hardly breathe, my heart pounding in my chest. "I can't believe I'm actually here," I replied, my voice barely above a whisper. "What if someone finds out?" He chuckled softly, the sound sending a thrill through me. "Let them. Right now, it's just you and me." The tension snapped, and suddenly, we were lost in each other. Jake's lips crashed against mine, igniting a fire I had kept buried for far too long. I melted into him, our bodies fitting together as if they were always meant to be. Every kiss, every touch felt like a revelation. We stumbled into the bedroom, the excitement of being away from home turning every moment into something electric. I could feel the weight of my life back home slipping away, replaced by the intoxicating pull of Jake. "God, you're beautiful," he breathed, his hands exploring my body, sending sparks racing through my veins. I felt alive, every nerve ending awakening under his touch. I had never experienced anything like this before. My past, my responsibilities, everything faded into the background as I surrendered to the moment. We were two people escaping reality, two souls entwined in a forbidden dance. The hotel room became our sanctuary, a place where we could be ourselves without fear of judgment or consequence. I felt liberated, as if I could finally breathe. The passion that exploded between us was like fireworks, bright and dazzling, filling the air with a sense of urgency and desire. "Let's forget everything else," Jake whispered, as he pulled me closer, his breath hot against my skin. "Just for this weekend." I nodded, my heart racing at the thought. For those few days, I could be someone else, someone free from the shackles of my life. I was ready to embrace the chaos, ready to dive deeper into this world we had created together, even if it meant leaving everything behind. As the weekend unfolded, we lost ourselves in one another, exploring every inch of passion that had been building between us. Each moment was a mix of excitement and fear, the thrill of our secret making everything feel more intense. When it was finally time to leave, I felt a pang of regret. I didn't want to return to my reality, to the life that felt increasingly suffocating. But as I packed my things, I couldn't shake the feeling that I had crossed a line I could never uncross. "Promise me we'll do this again," Jake said, his eyes searching mine. "I promise," I replied, though I knew the weight of that promise was heavier than I let on. Stepping out of the hotel, I felt a mix of exhilaration and dread. I had tasted freedom, and now I craved more. As I returned home to Tom, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was living two lives, and one of them was about to unravel. I'm standing in front of the mirror. The reflection staring back at me feels foreign. My heart races as I smooth down my blouse. The mundane routine of my life is creeping back in, and it's suffocating. I catch a glimpse of my wedding ring, its glint both comforting and constricting. Tom is at home, blissfully unaware of the storm brewing within me. As I step outside, the world feels heavy. The air is thick with unspoken words and desires. I enter the office, my pulse quickening as I catch sight of Jake at his desk. He looks up, and our eyes lock for a heartbeat longer than necessary. A rush of warmth floods through me, and I can't help but smile. "Morning, Jake," I say, trying to sound casual. "Hey there," he replies, his voice low and inviting. There's a spark in his gaze, one that ignites something deep inside me. I turn away quickly, pushing the feelings down. I can't let this happen. I can't let myself get lost in thoughts of him again. But the air feels charged, and I know that the tension between us is palpable. The thrill of our secret hangs in the air like an electric current. As the day unfolds, I find myself distracted. I can't focus on the reports in front of me. Instead, I imagine the last time we were together, the way his hands felt on my skin. I shake my head, trying to clear my thoughts. I can't do this. I'm married. "Are you okay?" Tom's voice breaks through my reverie. He's standing in the doorway, concern etched on his face. "You seem distant." "Just a bit tired," I reply, forcing a smile. "Long night at work." The lie rolls off my tongue too easily, and guilt tugs at my heart. Tom nods, but I can see the doubt in his eyes. He doesn't need to know the truth that I'm craving Jake in a way that's consuming me. The day drags on, and as evening approaches, I feel a mix of dread and excitement. I know that Jake will be waiting for me in our usual spot, the quiet corner of the office where we've shared so many moments that blurred the lines between friendship and desire. When I finally make my way there, my heart is pounding. The door creaks open, and there he is, leaning against the desk, looking effortlessly handsome. "You made it," he says, a smirk playing on his lips. I couldn't stay away, I confess, stepping closer. The air is thick with anticipation, and I can feel the heat radiating between us. "I've missed you," he says softly, his eyes searching mine. The sincerity in his voice sends a shiver down my spine. "I shouldn't be here," I whisper, torn between the life I've built and the passion that has ignited within me. "Why not?" he asks, his voice dropping to a low whisper. "You're here because you want to be. We both know it." His words strike a chord within me, and I can't help but nod. "I want to be here," I admit, the truth spilling out. With that, he closes the distance between us, and his lips find mine. It's electric, a collision of everything I've been trying to deny. The kiss deepens, and I feel the world fade away, leaving just the two of us. When we pull apart, breathless, the reality of my situation crashes back. "Jake, I can't..." "Tom," I stammer, panic rising within me. "Forget about Tom for a moment," he murmurs, brushing a strand of hair away from my face. "Just be with me." I close my eyes, letting his words wash over me. The danger of it all sends a thrill through me, but the guilt is a heavy weight in my chest. I'm living a lie, and yet, here I am, craving this man. "I have to go," I finally say, stepping back. "I can't do this anymore." Jake's expression shifts, a mix of disappointment and understanding. "You're not alone in this, you know. I want you, but I can't force you." His words resonate with the turmoil inside me. I feel torn between the life I've built with Tom and the fiery passion that Jake ignites within me. As I leave the office, I glance back at Jake one last time. Our eyes meet, and in that moment, I know that this isn't over. The pull between us is too strong, too intoxicating to ignore. I step out into the cool evening air, my heart heavy with the weight of my choices. The thrill of our secret lingers, but so does the guilt. I know I'm walking a tightrope, and each step feels more precarious than the last. Back home, Tom greets me with a warm smile, and I feel a pang of guilt. How can I look him in the eye, knowing what I've done? But as he wraps his arms around me, I can't help but feel a sense of normalcy wash over me. "Did you have a good day?" he asks, oblivious to the storm brewing beneath my calm exterior. "Yeah, it was fine," I reply, forcing a smile. The words taste bitter on my tongue. As the evening unfolds, I try to push thoughts of Jake away, but they linger like a shadow in my mind. The tenderness of Tom's touch feels foreign, and I know that I'm drifting further away from the life I once cherished. The challenge of returning to normalcy gnaws at me. The thrill of my secret life with Jake contrasts sharply with the predictable rhythm of my marriage. I can feel the tension, the undercurrent of desire that refuses to dissipate. In the quiet moments, I find myself questioning everything. The laughter, the love I once felt for Tom, now feels tainted by the passion I share with Jake. I'm caught in a whirlwind, and I don't know how to escape. Each day becomes a battle between two worlds, two lives that can't coexist. I can feel Tom's gaze linger on me, his suspicion growing. The weight of my decisions presses heavily on my chest, and I wonder how long I can keep this charade going. The line between right and wrong is blurring, and I'm standing on the edge, teetering between safety and the intoxicating thrill of the unknown. I don't know how this will end, but I can't shake the feeling that I'm already in too deep. The pressure of keeping the secret was overwhelming. Every glance exchanged with Jake felt like a spark igniting a fire that I couldn't contain. I was caught between two worlds, my life with Tom, which was steady and familiar, and the chaotic thrill of my connection with Jake, which pulled at me like a magnet. The tension was palpable, and I could feel it tightening around me like a noose. One afternoon, while we were tucked away in the corner of the office, I could sense Jake's gaze on me. He leaned in closer, his voice low and urgent. "We can't keep doing this forever. I want more than just stolen moments." I swallowed hard, my heart racing. "What do you mean?" I asked, trying to play it cool, but the flutter in my stomach betrayed me. "I want you, all of you, not just these sneaky meetings," he said, his eyes dark and intense. "I want to take you away, somewhere we can be free." The thought sent a thrill down my spine, but it also filled me with dread. I couldn't just abandon everything. Tom trusted me, loved me. I could see the confusion in Jake's expression as I hesitated. The weight of my silence hung between us. "Are you afraid?" he asked, a mix of frustration and desire in his voice. I looked around, making sure no one was listening. "It's not just fear. It's complicated." "Complicated? Or convenient?" Jake challenged, leaning back slightly but still holding my gaze. His words struck a nerve. I felt a pang of guilt wash over me. "It's not that simple, Jake. Tom is my husband. We have a life together." "And what about what I make you feel?" he pressed, moving closer again. "When I touch you, when I kiss you, don't you feel alive?" I closed my eyes for a moment, letting my mind drift back to those secret moments we shared. The kisses, the laughter, the way he made my heart race. "I do," I admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. "But I can't just throw everything away." Jake's expression softened, but his determination was unwavering. "Then we need to find a way to make it work. I can't be just a secret anymore. I want you to choose me." His words hung in the air, heavy with implications. I felt a tug of war inside me, an emotional battle I wasn't sure I could win. The thought of Tom's trusting smile, the life we built together, clashed with the intoxicating allure of Jake's passion. "Tom asked me if something was wrong the other day," I said, my voice trembling. "He knows I've been different." Jake frowned, clearly frustrated. "You can't keep lying to him, and you can't keep lying to yourself. Something has to give." I took a deep breath, feeling the pressure mounting. Maybe I could talk to him, but what would I say? That I'm in love with someone else? "You don't have to say it like that," Jake said, his tone softening. "But you deserve to be happy, and so do I. We can't keep pretending." The honesty in his eyes made my chest tighten. What would happen if I chose him? Would I lose everything? My heart raced at the thought, but there was also an undeniable thrill in the idea of breaking free from the chains of my life. I don't know if I can do this, I whispered. What if we get caught? Jake smirked, his confidence radiating. That's part of the excitement, isn't it? Living on the edge, feeling alive. I wanted to scream, to tell him that I was terrified, but instead, I nodded slowly. What do you have in mind? His smile widened, and I felt a rush of adrenaline. A weekend getaway? Just you and me. We could go somewhere no one knows us, away from all this. I hesitated, considering the implications. What about Tom? He'd be worried if I just disappeared for a weekend. Tell him it's a work trip. You always have those, he said, a mischievous glint in his eye. And then we can finally explore what we have, without fear. The idea was intoxicating, but the weight of my decision pressed heavily on my shoulders. I could almost feel the walls closing in, my heart pounding in my chest. I'll need to think about it. Just think about how it would feel to be free, even if it's just for a moment, Jake said, his voice low and enticing. You deserve it. As I walked away from our conversation, the reality of my situation crashed down on me. I was standing at a crossroads, and every choice I made from this point on would change everything. The thrill of what Jake proposed lingered in my mind, but so did the image of Tom, waiting at home, trusting me completely. That night, as I lay in bed next to Tom, his steady breathing a reminder of our shared life, I felt a twist of anxiety. I wanted to reach out, to feel the warmth of his body, but my heart was elsewhere. It ached with desire for someone who was not him. The thought was suffocating, and I could feel the walls of my secret closing in. The following days felt like a blur, each moment stretching painfully long. My heart raced every time I saw Jake, the tension between us thick enough to cut. I could see it in his eyes. He was waiting for my answer, for me to take the leap. When Tom finally confronted me again, I could see the worry etched on his face. You've been distant. Is there something going on? His voice was calm, but I could hear the underlying fear. I opened my mouth to respond, but the truth was lodged in my throat, heavy and unyielding. No, everything is fine, I lied, the words tasting bitter. Just a lot of work stress. He nodded, but I could see the doubt lingering in his eyes, the questions he didn't voice. I felt a pang of guilt, but Jake's words echoed in my mind, urging me to choose my own happiness. The pressure was mounting, and the weight of my secret felt almost unbearable. I was living a lie, and every moment I spent with Tom felt like a betrayal to both of us. I was standing on the edge, and Jake's proposal loomed before me like a siren's call, promising a release from my turmoil. But at what cost?